All right. Claims that we're live. You're on full screen on a monitor. I can't tell. Yeah. This has been crazy. Like we changed the whole studio
Yeah.
and well, we had somebody else actually rent out the studio last week, so I had to remove everything. So
Is this a
everything was
place you
still
rent out, or is it
No,
somewhere you rent?
so this is Singcast. I've got a sort of a trade with Rebecca Burnworth. She owns the Stave, the restaurant out in the
Yeah.
Bourbon Trail District
Gotcha.
7 Social. So this is her building. She used to lease this out to somebody else. During COVID, they left. She turned it into a content studio, and so we do any sort of production that needs to come in-house. So
I love the idea of content studios. I've seen a couple apps that like promote like Airbnb style content studios for different marketing firms. And there's so many freelance photographers and videographers now that, they need a place to go and shoot things. I saw one that was like 3,000 or 4,000 square feet, and they had probably 8 different, setups in there and can change things out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm at one of like 4 little vignettes, if you want to call them that. So this is actually like a gate to a farm that just has glass on it, turned into a dining room table kind of setup. So I know you can't see in here, but that's what this is.
Yeah.
It's actually a full kitchen over here with double ovens.
Oh.
Can't really tell at the moment, but this is a bar sort of setup. And then sort of a living room setup back there. But I've got a whole seamless, I don't know what you can really tell, but there's a product shoot going on back there. That's what I was doing right before this. Then I
saw the stories. They look
together.
Good. It looks good. That's all that matters.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. The behind the scenes is always funny of shoots, right? People only know what you show them in front of the camera, which is pretty crazy. Which I guess kind of sums up social media in general.
I think, that's marketing in general right there. It's probably a good place to kick off. It's funny. We used to shoot so many videos. I mean, we still do, but like with the barbecue restaurant, we had so many behind the scenes vlogs, and we would have, I don't know, 4 hours worth of footage that would get chopped up and broken down to like 5 to 10 minutes. And it's telling that how much is actually happens in the world that gets filtered down for a consumable medium like TV, movies, anything, right? Facebook. Also, that most things you do in a day just tend to not matter, and that was really eye-opening for me. If you think about it, it's like, man, if it's only worth sharing 5 to 10 minutes of what happened over this 8-hour day, how much of life actually matters, So there's a whole philosophical debate we could have there, I think.
So what is worth sharing?
Oh, that's a great question.
I mean, it's obviously loaded and it has many layers to it.
No, I think it's a great first question, though, because you see this all the time with social media clients, and so do we. A lot of times people want to share what they want to share because it's what they like, or it's what they're interested in, or it's what they think. I don't even know. It's like it's a scratch of an ego, and I think in a lot of ways. And that's okay if you call that out in the beginning, where you're like, hey, I'm just doing this to sort of satisfy my artistic itch, and like I want to post something that makes me feel good, and like it's like an expression of myself. And if people like it, and if it's a business specific case study, if people like it and do a business activity around it, awesome. But if not, I'm just doing it for me. But what a lot of people don't get is that your social media, your content, everything is about the other people. And going back to the Lyles barbecue vlogs, a lot of that was about me and my own artistic itch. And I think I understood that probably on some subconscious level, because I never really expected it to drive any business results, but I never put any actual like words to it.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I think it's almost, the same. How do I want to say this? People are people. At the end of the day, if it's a consumer we're talking about, if it's friends, family, relationship, stranger, people are people. And the way we communicate is basically the same, no matter who it is. We like to have it framed in our head like our communication is different, but it's actually the same. Like a great leader needs to be able to be transparent and say like, and put their foot down at certain times. Also be warm and friendly and inviting, so that there is that culture of openness and dialogue between leadership and, employees or whatever. And I think the same is social. if you're doing certain things and you're not really expressing or even just explicitly telling your audience, here's why you see what you see from me, then there could be a lot of misperception or like misunderstanding for why I'm seeing this from you, you know?
Mm,
So is it, like you said, is it vanity? Is it to make yourself feel good? Is it sharing what's actually going on in your life? And a lot of times that just could be cool things and you're not trying to show off. That just is your life, you know?
mhm.
Um, but whatever that is, I think to your point, I think it's important to call that out so that there's no misunderstanding of why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that a lot of first-time directors and bands and musicians and artists, like, it there's a lot more people that have one really good piece of work the first time, and then they fall off a cliff after that. And I think it's because they start by making something for themselves, but it's really for their niche audience that they're just naturally a part of.
Mhm.
Um, and so the example for that I could use is that I would make barbecue cooking videos, and I didn't really have a lot of thought around demographics or who I'm making this for or why I'm making it. I just made it because I thought it was cool. Um, but if I try to expand beyond that, we would have a big fall off the cliff because I didn't actually know those other industries as well as I knew the one that I was in every single day of my life. And so as
Yeah.
a marketer, I have to a perfect example, we have a cheerleading company client, and, I'm not a cheerleader. I've never been a cheerleader. I have a daughter that's 6 now and just now took 1 week of cheerleading camp. I have no experience with anything to do with cheerleading. Same with my partners who work on this brand. And what we have to do as good marketers, and good business owners in general, if you're just the one that owns the brand, is that you have to be able to put yourself in the brand's shoes and say, okay, what is this brand talking about? And it's not about me. It's not about what I want to do. It's about what's the best for this brand here.
Mhm.
Um, and then you launch from there. But a lot of these, circling back to what I said just a minute ago, you have to. It's okay to be artistic, and it's okay to know, like, hey, I'm doing this as art. It's for me, and that's all right. And a lot of times that works out at a certain scale for business owners as well, or marketers of companies, because you're staying inside of your sandbox. The problem is that when you start to scale up and you start to get bigger, doing it that way doesn't always work out. So you have to change and pivot, and the message has to evolve and grow over time.
Yeah. So I guess to that point, if you are a new business, um, where do you start?
I think if you're a new business and you have experience in the space, you're starting,
Yeah.
like, you probably, if you're like most small business owners, you are a person who started a company because you're very familiar with the space or with the pain point of the people that you're serving, right? So if you come out with a new lotion, let's say, and you invented it in your kitchen, and now you're at farmers market selling it, you invented that product because maybe none of the lotions on the market actually fit the problems you were having with your elbows or knees or whatever, right? And so the content you should make, it's going to be very easy to do because you're going to have a very clear understanding of what your target market needs. And so just make that stuff. Like, ask yourself, like, what questions were you searching for when you were doing research on lotions in the market?
Right.
What content are you really into? Like, what influencers did you connect with because they had the same sort of like elbow issue that you had, and they were giving you really good advice on it, and maybe you reach out to them for a collaboration. So I think it's, when you're first starting out, it's to be as small as possible and don't get too far away from what got you to start the business itself. It's only down the road when you're trying to hit a bigger and bigger and bigger market that you may start to change some of the things that you say in your messaging. Like, let's say you start out with, hey, we're the best lotion for this issue in an elbow, like the
Mhm.
best. There is no better lotion. We built it for this specific reason, blah, blah, blah. Well, that kicks off the business flywheel to where now you have a little bit of momentum, profit, word of mouth, all the things going. So now you've got juice in the system, so that when you're ready to grow a little bit, then you can start using words like it's organic or it's made from, thank you. It's Siri's over here searching elbow issues. That's
You
gonna be
got
weird ads
Siri,
on
and I
my
got a
Facebook.
couple fruit flies over here, just like in
Yeah.
my face. I'm like, what is going on today?
Yeah. Yeah. But so you get that momentum, and then you start to expand the messaging a little bit more to the broader, like, lotion wearer market. Perfect example is Gymshark, right? You look at Gymshark starting out, they were just for muscle muscle bodybuilders in gyms. Like they went after the hardcore lifters in gyms. They went to lifting markets. The guy had a background in lifting. He's very passionate about it. They started out very, very small. Fast forward, I think it may be a decade later. I don't know how long that brand's been around exactly, but they are basically just an athleisure brand like a Lululemon or anything else, right? And Lululemon even did the same thing where they started out very specific in the yoga market on the West Coast specifically, and then grew out from there to be basically the pants that everybody wears today, no matter what.
But do they have success because of timing and being pretty early to market? Or, I mean, pants are not new.
Yeah.
Working out's not new. Athletic clothing, like specific to working out, is not new. So what do you think was a differentiator for them to be able to actually explode?
I think that's a very complicated question. I think if you get
Yeah.
into the actual the business mechanics of it, it is a perfect storm of the right people in leadership, the right product at the right time with changing taste in the culture, and then just good luck and knowing how to capitalize on good luck and knowing how to mitigate bad luck.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any specific advantage really to being a first mover in any market. There's plenty of case studies about the people that invent the thing don't actually be the ones that go on and capitalize on it, right? Like think about in our world, social media, there's plenty of social media platforms before Facebook took off, right? MySpace is the big one that comes to mind. Friendster, some things like that, AIM. Like there's other elements that we see in Facebook today that were invented by other people. It was sort of like they came along and, put it all together. And when you're the first mover, you have to have a lot of cash to be able to wait for people to adopt your product. Like
Right.
there's a whole thing that
Well,
I'm
you're
obsessed
creating a
with.
whole category at that point, right?
Yeah, like
So,
you're changing, people's behaviors. And, I also subscribe to the belief that there's nothing new in the world. It's all just sort of remixes and collaborations. Your music background.
yeah,
It's like what piece of music is actually new and not ever inspired by anything else, right? And so
the same
to
12 tones.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's like you play the same pop song with the same 4 chords but it's 50,000 different pop songs, right? It's Lululemon specifically didn't invent pants. Gymshark didn't invent gym clothes, but they went and found a market that wasn't being talked to and wasn't being represented, right? And so when you get to the point where you know you put a logo on your chest, right? A Nike logo on your chest. Like, what does that mean? It means you're a person that just does it, right? And so there's a very specific reason why High B Marketing chose Nike polos to put our logo on, because we believe in constant improvement. We believe in getting after it. We believe in just do it. And we take an athletic approach to a lot of the way we run our company. So that's a very specific reason that we chose this look.
Yeah.
And to be frank, High B Marketing doesn't have a fraction. It's not even represented on the scale of how much brand awareness Nike has. And so then we can do something smart, which is like associating two brands to where you might have a positive affiliation with Nike, and now you start to positively affiliate us with it, right? That was the reason why we sold Coca-Cola products in the barbecue restaurant and not Pepsi products. Lexington itself was a huge Coke market. That's a really well-established brand, probably the best established brand on the planet from a goodwill standpoint. And so we had that beautiful Coke red logo in the middle of all the wood panels and brown colors, and it made you feel the way we wanted you to feel. So I feel like that's a little bit of a wandering answer, but the real takeaway there is if you're starting out as a business, you need to start with, why does your business exist? Who do you exist for? And what problem are you solving for them? And then just hammer making content about those three things.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating to go on social media. If you were somebody that was starting a brand new company and you're like, I have no idea where to start with marketing, any of this kind of stuff. I don't even make content, but I know I need to, so I'm going to. And then you want to go and you learn, and you get inundated with just all these different points of view that I think mostly are correct in some aspect, but there's no through line of like a timeline of when each thing actually should occur. Because you'll have some people that are like, you shouldn't talk about the features of your product. You should talk about the benefits of the product. And it's like, okay, but there's a time and a place for that. about who you're talking to, where are you in the journey, all of that stuff. You
Yeah.
should be making lifestyle content that's all brand building, and go out and do like the mini microphone thing, go downtown, ask questions about like, hey, and like whatever, doing interviews on the street, the man on the street concept, right? That has nothing to do with your product, but it'll bring a lot of eyeballs depending on how you do it. Like that's
Yeah.
appropriate also, but there's a time and a place and a way to deploy that. So if you just blindly go online and see that, you're going to see a lot of different things and go, well, I don't know where to start. And a
Yeah.
lot of times people will start with what they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
I'm a talker. I've always been a talker, so I'm going to go downtown and do the mini mic thing. But nobody knows my product, so it's not going to actually help move that needle. That doesn't quite make sense, If, to your point, if you're Coca-Cola, it doesn't make sense for them to do any marketing because they've got the world's attention already. We already know what Coke is. There's a reason that they have bears and everything else selling their product at Christmas time, and they're not talking to you about the 2.8 grams of high fructose corn syrup, which is a lot cheaper for they don't talk about that kind of crap because it doesn't matter to the consumer. They're at the point where it's about lifestyle and fitting in and, associating that way. When you're early, to your point, it's like, what is your different, like your lotion that you made in your kitchen, like you're talking about this example.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe you have a specific disorder, something that's like a hypersensitivity to things that are all on mainstream lotions. And you came up with a product that uses something else that's organic, that actually solves the problem. You got to tell that story. And that does start to feel like you're at the bottom and talking features and not and benefits.
Well, I don't think you are
but
talking features there. I don't think so. I think you're going with, hey, I had my daughter who's 10 developed this crazy condition on her elbow. These pain points happened because of that. She was embarrassed to go play sports. She didn't want to wear short sleeve shirts in the summer, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so that made me feel bad as a mom or a dad. And so I went to the kitchen and I started figuring out how to make lotion, and I did it. I came up with this specific formula that now she has no more elbow issues. All those problems have gone away. I haven't said anything about the product feature wise.
Sure.
I think if you look at humans on an individual level, or if we even put them into buckets where we say, okay, some people's personality styles are, give me no details, just tell me it's going to do the thing. I'm going to trust you. If you screw me over, I'll never trust you again. And that's how I make my decisions in life. And then there's another camp of people that are like, I need to see every single detail that you got. I need to know. I'm very nerdy about it. I want to know the details. It brings me peace to know everything and research it all myself. And then there's a spectrum of people in between those two groups. Those people, they all operate the same from they like the story at the beginning, how they sort of choose their own adventure after you bring them in with the good storytelling marketing, right? And some people are going to be like, oh, hey, I saw this story. This influencer talked about this product. They liked it. They didn't mention any benefits. They just mentioned the story of how they interacted with the product. And so I went and bought it. And, they're more on that side of like, I don't need details. I'm just here to trust people. And when I don't trust them, I don't trust them anymore.
Well,
people are going to choose their own adventure.
Insert one thing to that though?
Yeah.
Because again, this is a very specific thing to this kind of example where you're solving a problem where somebody might have like a sensitivity, or it's a medical thing where it really does matter. I need to know, like, does this candy bar have nuts in it? Because I might, die if I eat this, right? Like you have to.
But if you approached them from if you ran ads, for instance, right? That's where my world is. If you just started running ads where you're talking about features and just hitting them with features, it'll never work. Like you have to bring them into your world from an emotional standpoint, right? Our brains always engage emotionally first on everything. As much as, even if you're the person that's like, I'm basically a modern day monk with the amount of data that I consider before I make decisions and blah, blah, blah. It's just not true. Your brain is wired for processing way too much information unconsciously. It only brings to the conscious the things that it thinks you may need to be concerned about, which are usually life, death. Those are really core emotional things that come to the forefront. Hunger, yada, yada. And so the best way to do that is to show a story where that is happening. But if you just present a bunch of data, like let's say cocoa leaves were I don't even know if cocoa plants have leaves, but let's say cocoa leaf was the secret ingredient. If you just said cocoa leaves based lotion, like unless I'm a super nerd and I know that world, I'm like, that messaging is not going to resonate with me because I don't know what cocoa leaves do. But if you hook me in with that story, and then I do think you end up choosing your own adventure after that, where you're going like, I am a person that has like a severe medical condition and I have allergies and like I need to know these details. Like, yeah, so that's why you have to have that sort of thing on your website. Like you have to have a place for people to be able to go and explore and gather the right information, which is why when we coach, like, we do a lot of consulting and give away a lot of free stuff, but like we have a marketing flywheel. Like that's what I built that on the pain of the lessons I learned doing the barbecue restaurant, but it starts with purpose in the middle, the why you exist. Then we define your target market. Like we talked about the who, the what problem. And the second segment of that flywheel is branding. And all we mean by branding is like, do you have the right name? Do you have the right colors and logo that's creating the right look and feel? Do you have a website with all the information we're talking about? So like you're building out, when you build your marketing plan from zero that way, you're building all the fundamentals from the ground up. You can start running ads tomorrow, do social media tomorrow, but if you don't have those other things first, you're sort of like, you're going to lose momentum. You're not going to be able to get as much momentum as you could have. Like if your website's not collecting emails, like how are you going to keep them in that world and keep working with them? Because some people, like you're talking about, aren't going to be ready to buy yet, but you might have to send them a couple of emails. You're like, hey, Sally had this problem, and maybe it's a different story from a different angle with different facts. And then it sort of, it continues on that way. I think anybody that looks for marketing to be and I'm really preaching at my old self here. Like I used to look at marketing strategies and plans and hacks and tactics. I was just looking for the one magic bullet I could hit one time and I could end up with, crazy amount of revenue, crazy amount of sales. And I could just coast down easy street. And that's not business. And that's definitely not how marketing works. It's posting on social media at least once every single day. It's sending out one weekly email to your newsletter. It's writing one blog post a week. It's rebuilding your website every 6 months and updating it. It's a lot of the, if you use I'm a big NFL fan, football fan. So if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, like you're going to have to block, you're going to have to tackle, like step one, and then you're going to do that every year. You're going to go to the gym. You're going to go weightlift. You're going to get your body taken care of. You're going to do all the basics year in, year out. And there's always a new season. Like every year, whenever that starts for your company, for us, it's January 1. It's like, cool, new season's here. Like, let's get back in the game and do the things over again. But when you're running a business, it never ends. There is no hack. There's no easy way to make this work unless you just hit, I don't know, some sort of pay dirt and you get really, really lucky. And, there's always those exceptions to the rule, but I'll tell you, there's never happened for me in 10 years of doing this.
So I'm curious now that you're still in Nashville, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you've been there for a few years at this point. You were in the Air Force back in the day. How long did you serve?
4 years.
4 years? Okay. So can we maybe go through that journey just real quick of like going from the Air Force, what you were doing and helping people understand certain things? Was it like financial questions? I can't recall that part of the story. People were asking you questions.
I was a contract specialist in the Air Force, which meant that I spent government money. And so, when the Air Force needed anything from, lawn care on the base to hospital services to boots to, I bought an armor plated Ranger, those kind of, giant golf cart things with mud tires on them.
Oh yeah.
And that was the coolest thing I ever bought. I loved that thing. It was mainly because I wanted one. I thought that was awesome. But so, a lot of the Air Force is contracted out from an efficiency standpoint and a way to stimulate the economy. And we don't need to go into all that stuff. But basically, I spent $50 million by the time I was 23. And that gave me a huge insight into the world of business. And it was like a really great, I dropped out of college. So it was a great way for me to actually get my feet wet with business.
And real quick for insight into that, because this is a selfish question.
No,
what does that really look like as a government entity actually buying something from a company? Are the steps literally the exact same where you just go and you take like there's a government credit card and you're just whoop, 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 purchase? Like, what does that actually look like?
So it used to be called, I don't know what it's called now, but it was called the government purchase card. And I think it was anything under 25 grand, we could just swipe a card for and pay for it. Mm-hmm. Everything else has to be competed because the government wants, fair competition, and they want to with as much money as possible stimulate small businesses in the economy. And what they'll do is they'll use a website that used to be called FedBizOps. I think it's sam.gov now, and they'll post every single contract that they have coming up on that site. And then you go on there and you pick ones that you qualify for after you've gotten on the thing, and then you submit your bid. And then if you submit too low, you're thrown out. And if you're too high, you're thrown out. And then we sort of get the middle ones that we think, based on our best judgment, are going to actually be able to fulfill on time and quality and all the things. And then we basically, start to negotiate with them, see who can do the best on price, and then we buy it. And that's just done time and time and time again. What's interesting, I think this was the number I heard back in the day, so it could be wrong, but it was like 20% of contract actions in the military and government produce like 80% of the budget. And most of that goes to big businesses, your Lockheed Martin, Boeing, et cetera. The other 80% of actions, which is the majority of actions, only produces about 20% of the money spent. So that's, they know that, small businesses can't produce the high tech items that a lot of these other companies just can from 100 years of building them up. But what they do with that other money is they try to get the rest of that money to small businesses as often as they can. And we spend so much on defense that it's a significant amount. But yeah, it's open for anybody as long as you go through the steps of qualifying and do the things. It's a lot easier than you would think for the majority of contract actions.
Yeah. So you were doing that. You were buying things for the government. What came next?
Yeah. So while I was doing that, I started barbecuing in my backyard for fun. And, I told this story a lot, but it's basically, my wife and I got married, and she got mad about how much money I was spending on my weekend hobby barbecuing. And so we got into this early.
How much were you spending?
Oh, I don't even know, man. I mean, making a brisket, like a brisket's $80. And then, back then it might've been $50. And then you're talking about another 50 for, let's just call it wood, supplies, all the things. There's always something you're buying. There's no economy of scale. There's no efficiency when you're doing it in your backyard. Not really. So it was probably about $100 on the weekend when I would do it. And we would just argue about it. And so then I was like, I'm going to go out and sell some and see if I can break even. Then you can't give me a hard time anymore. And so it was a very dumb early marriage guy conversation. But, I went to my office with some ribs and I sold them, and I broke even. And then that was sort of how Lyles Barbecue Company was started. And then I did that for about a year, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I got more into it, and my contract with the Air Force came up. And, just as fate would have it, my parents were retiring from the Air Force at the same time. My contract was ending. Julia was graduating college to be a teacher. And so we all decided to move back to Lexington, Kentucky, and start selling barbecue out of a tent on the side of the road.
Yeah. So what was that like? You're sitting there selling at the side of the road. You said you went to I'm trying to recall, because I haven't heard this story in years at this point.
Yeah.
Like setting up tents at, I don't know if I'm going to get you in trouble, at UK, selling stuff or something?
Well, we never sold. So we would go to all the food truck events, and we had we did all the health department things, and we had a commercial kitchen and all that stuff. But it was a lot. I mean, you're talking about, we didn't know anything. The only restaurant experience we had on the team, which was a terrible idea, was me working at Sonic in high school for like a year and a half.
Perfect.
And so we knew nothing about anything restaurant wise. And so we literally learned on the job. And, that first year and a half was really tough. And I tell people this now. I'm like, look, if you want to open a business in an industry you have no experience in, you have to go work in that industry for 2 years. You're going to significantly decrease the chance that you fail if you go work in the industry and actually get to learn something about it. So the number of people that just take, HELOCs out on their house and then go open a new restaurant, it's mind boggling to me, and food trucks and everything else. And they all end up for sale 2 or 3 years later. Just because you get into it and you're like, oh, I don't actually want to work every Saturday for the rest of my life and wash dishes and deal with employees and all the unique challenges that come with running a barbecue restaurant, or any restaurant for that instance. But that's same for any industry. You might think you really want to be a metal worker. Maybe you're working a corporate job now and you're like, yeah, no, I want to really want to weld stuff, and I want to make custom metal projects for people. And that's great. Maybe you do that for fun on the weekends when you want, but all of a sudden when it's a professional career job, that's a word, right? It's
career job.
It's something career job. You're now doing it Monday through Friday, and you're doing it 100 hours a week if that's what the contract said. And it becomes a job. And there's a lot of perks and benefits and freedom and all that. And you know that, but it's still a job. You still got stuff you don't like. You still got people you don't like. You got people you love. It's tough. And so that first year and a half of being in a tent in the barbecue restaurant was a grind. And it was just being too stupid to quit that kept us going. But the thing we had going for us was that we borrowed no money to do it. So we just bought a tent and a smoker. I think we had like $5,000 in it altogether to get off the ground. And then we got really creative because we didn't have any money. We ended up renting out a bunch of different previously owned restaurants. And so the first one we had was on Nicholasville Road out there by Toyota on Nicholasville. And then, we were there for a year and a half, learning, going slow. Basically when we opened that first restaurant, we were like, we're going to take everything we do about food trucks and just put it in a restaurant. And so basically we're going to operate it like a food tent, and we're just going to have 30 seats
just
set
inside
and just be inside. And that was literally what we did. And the rent was super cheap. I think it was under $1,000 for that first year. And we did it, and we launched, and we learned, we taught ourselves about business, and marketing was a big part of that, because that's a terrible location for a restaurant. A, it's been 100 different restaurants. B, people go 80 on that road, and I think the speed limit's 55. And so it's not a good place for people to stop. That is a brutal road. And so
they're also looking that way and not over there.
Not to the right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that building is so far back from the road that you don't get any benefit of drive-by traffic, and there's 100,000 cars that go up and down that road.
And now it's this while they're driving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're looking at the phone. So we had to teach ourselves how to do digital marketing, all the things. And, we wasted a lot of money. I bought billboards, I bought radio ads, I bought TV ads, I bought newspaper ads, I bought every kind of ad possible.
So when you say wasted, why do you say wasted?
But it didn't return any sort of investment. And when you're starting out, you don't get to do branding marketing. That is a very bad idea. And, billboards work for their intended purpose, which is high level, high funnel awareness. Like just, I love what Chick-fil-A does, for example, from a entertainment value add thing, but nobody goes to eat Chick-fil-A because they saw cows. That doesn't trigger, like I didn't see a picture of food, which made me want to go buy it. But they can afford to do that because they're a huge company. They've been around a long time. That's a good part of their marketing plan. So what we figured out to do was to run Facebook ads to try to get people on our email list with a free sandwich. And then we could retarget them, remarket to them. And like, we did a lot of lower funnel stuff where I was just like trying to get you to come have lunch today. And right as we were getting out, probably the last year, maybe year and a half, we started to do some more brand awareness stuff, which was like the video work, a lot more like storytelling type stuff. But for a long time, it was hand-to-hand combat, selling shit on the internet, and that was it.
Yeah. So what would you have done differently? Because when you were talking about the email thing and giving away free sandwiches, there was a little tone in there that seemed like, yeah, that was dumb.
No,
That's
it was
how
a great
I heard
idea.
that. Okay.
No, it was a great idea. It was.
I thought it was a great idea.
What's dumb
so I was
that
curious what you thought.
No, I think what was dumb about it was that I was just too stupid to figure it out 3 years earlier. It took too long to get to that point, right? Because again, we knew I'd never worked in marketing. I literally, the stuff I've learned about marketing, I started from zero after I got out of the Air Force. And so you don't have to market a lot when you're in the military. People just come to you. It's great. It's much easier that way. And you have government money. It's much easier.
So if you could go back in time and go to the tent and market the hell out of that thing, what would step like number 1 through 3 be right now? You got $5,000 invested, and that's it.
Yeah.
From a marketing perspective, so that you could get to that next level.
I would do, if I had to do it all over again, I would do everything I could to make the tent itself look good. So, it's a production. You do what's called 4 walls marketing, right? Even though you're a tent, like what does the tent look like? What do the tables look like? Like, what do people see? What do they smell? What's the experience as they come up? Because if it's a negative experience, it doesn't matter if you bring them there, they're not going to actually stay. So you got to make sure the product is A+. You got to make sure the tent itself looks as good as possible. Put a little bit of money into designing a logo, that represents the company you're trying to build.
So are you saying you did not do that?
I did not. No, there's a picture up. If you look on, I have to find it and send it to you at some point. There's a picture of like one of the early events we did with like a generic blue, like the wrong color blue Sam's Club tent with like white unfoldable or fold out tables with no covers on them and like temporary chafing stands. And, it just looked a mess. And the only thing we did right was we had a pretty good logo, which was the logo the whole time we were there. Cause the guy that designed NASCAR race cars was a friend of my dad's, and he did it for us for like $50. It was a cool logo. And we had the smoker there that smelled good. And so we turned the fire on, and we never had anything cooking on it during the event. We just had the smell going, and that had us getting plenty of lines. And then we were just really nice to people. But eventually we learned like, oh, we need a better looking, like it matters what it looks like when people come up, because they're judging a book by its cover as they're coming up.
So I'm curious, if you were in a consumer stand, I mean, this is years ago, and at this point it doesn't matter, but I just wonder, how do you get to the point where you're like, you're blind to the blue tent and the white tables and not be in the consumer's shoes and be like, yeah, this isn't this. I would not eat it at a place like that, or I might eat there, but it didn't catch my attention, or you know what I mean?
No, what
Was
do you
that
mean?
just like putting the exercise of putting yourself, trying to remove yourself from like owning and being part of the business, and putting yourself as much as you could in like a third party, brand new person walking up point of
Yeah.
view, and going through the
Yeah.
same progression of like, okay, what did I see first? What do I
Yeah.
see here? Oh, I saw that person do this. I saw that person like wipe their nose, and I hate that. And that was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
It's Jim Collins calls it productive paranoia, which is what I love. It's like looking at something not from a negative. You do it on purpose. Like it's productive paranoia, which means that you're like, what is the thing that could go wrong that we need to mitigate against? And
I think you're describing my entire existence right now.
It's a key of I think he wrote it in his book, Great by Choice. And it's a factor of leadership teams that run great companies, is that they practice productive paranoia, which is like, what's happening in the market? What is, like, for instance, when COVID happened, like, do you have a way to take online orders? Like, do you have, like, it's being productively paranoid about what could go wrong. And the truth is that we spend a lot of time dreaming about our small businesses, dreaming about the world of being on our own and potentially being on Shark Tank, and like all the good stuff is what we dream about. And then it actually becomes a reality on some level, no matter how well that reality looks. It's now our baby, and it's now the thing that we love as much as we love a family member, right? And it's really hard to be subjective with a family member. But what we know as parents and as sons and daughters, like, we know that it's healthy to be subjective and objective with those that we love the most. Like, you need my honest feedback more than anybody else, because I love you more than anything. I'm the one that should be giving you that feedback, especially if it's in a world where like I have a level of expertise, right? So as a dad, when I look at my son or daughter and I give them, feedback on the world, like my daughter's 6 now. And so I'm giving her a kindergarten level feedback on things, but it kills me on the inside when I do it, because all I want to do is give her anything she wants and make the world perfect for her. Like, it kills me to do that. It kills me, but I know that she'll be a terrible person at 30 if I don't, and your business won't exist at 30 if you don't do this. And so you need to step back and look at the tent, so to speak, and go, what sucks about this? Go ask other people, like, change shirts and go walk around while your team runs the event and be like, what do you think about that barbecue place? Like, and then use that feedback, even if it's painful, because until you can like embrace the brutal facts of the situation and address them, it'll just persist forever. And then it's like a disease that just grows and grows and grows. And it will ultimately be the thing that kills your business.
That's the thing that I love to do, is sit there and like tear apart other people's stuff. Again, not in a negative way, but to sit there and just go, okay. And, in a comparison purpose, you know what I mean? Like, what do I see them doing? Why did they have that? Why don't they have something? Why do I see what I see from them? Going through the exercise of even, why don't I see something else from them? Was that a conscious choice not to go this route, but to do, like, just that constant thing. Yeah. I mean, I like your idea, especially if you're at like a food tent kind of situation, and you got a bunch of them next to each other, and your competition literally is right next to you, and you could just sit there and go, mine's brighter, mine's smaller, mine's bigger, mine's whatever. Yeah,
but it's easier to do when you're talking about that example. We do it today as a service business that's 100% remote, right? We don't have a building, we don't have anything like that. But I go online and I look at my competitors' websites. I go and look at their Google reviews. What do people love? Underline those words. What do they hate? Underline those words. Look at my website and go like, what's ugly about this? Like right now I'm thinking about my website and I know there's about 20 things on it that I need to change and want to change, but we're sort of at this level of cost benefit analysis where we're going, it's good enough for now. We don't have the money to invest in this $100,000 website that we'd love to build, but we're just going to keep doing the best we can with what we have. And at least we know, like we'll be the first ones to tell you that our website needs to be improved, right? And it's a pretty good website. Like I've seen websites and this is a pretty good website, especially for companies our size. But I know it's not as good as I want it to be. And so there's this constant state of, again, productive paranoia mixed in with like, we always want to be better today than we were yesterday, right? And I think if you can find a way to balance those two things out, you'll go really, really far. The third thing I would add to that, if I'm talking to another entrepreneur, is like, just don't take any risk that would bankrupt your business. Because when you do that, which I did, you're out of the game. And then you get to do this fun thing where you start all over, which is not fun.
What was there a particular thing that caused bankruptcy? I mean, you just made it sound like there was maybe like one thing that made that happen.
We opened a brand new restaurant concept with no testing and again, no experience, only back on the back of, we did that based on the previous 6 years experience of winning and going out and crushing it and doing all the things. And we just assumed we'd win again because we had gotten really lucky and worked hard and, we'd had a lot of wins over the last 6 years. So we went and bet as big as we could because when I did the P&L for that projected P&L, I said, oh, I'm going to drive a Ferrari if this works out. And that was all I was thinking about. I wasn't thinking about building the best business I possibly could. I was thinking about how do I grow this thing as fast as possible because I'm tired of being at the level I'm at. And so there was no productive paranoia. There was a huge risk that if it didn't work out, it really didn't work out. And, that wasn't a business strategy driven decision. That was a, like, we're just throwing stuff up against the wall to see what sticks, which is what worked in the early days, but we were doing it on a small scale. You're talking about $5,000 versus $400,000. It's a much different, like, it's okay to throw things against the wall for $5,000. It's not okay to do that when it comes to $400,000. I love Jim Collins. Like I read all of his books, like constantly. It's like the book that I read, all 5, 6 of his books. I'm just constantly reading through them. And another principle he talks about in those books is the, you fire bullets before you fire cannonballs. And the story there is that old time ships, Navy ships, when it was wooden boats with cannonballs, they didn't have a lot of gunpowder because you'd only take so much with you on the boat. So what they would do is they would fire musket balls at ships until they had it dialed in. And then they would pour a ton of gunpowder into a cannon and then launch that thing. And what that did was it helped them take calculated risk and improvements so that when they were ready to hit big, they just started dumping, boom, cannonball, 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 and then you can just hammer it. But what we did was we said, okay, barbecue restaurant, $5,000, 10 on the side of the road, gas station next to a liquor store, next to an hourly motel, like a little bit bigger cannonball, but it was like still small incremental changes. And then we took a bigger shot and we went to that Stonewall location and invested like $100,000, flipping it, buying it, doing all the things. And then that was a really great, profitable location for us. We were crushing it there. And then we said, let's grow 10 times as fast. And we tried to open that building over there on Southland. And that just like, it blew up. So instead of firing, what I should have done looking back on it was go, okay, let's bring the tent back out. But we take our lessons, what we know. Like, let's start the food truck circuit on this new brand and then just test, iterate, grow small, grow. And then we could have fired a big cannonball later down the road, but we were in a hurry. And there's another book that I really love by Simon Sinek called Infinite Game. I don't know if you've read that yet. Basically, the premise of the book, it's a good book, but like you don't have to read it. The premise of it is that we play 2 types of games in this life, finite games and infinite games. And a finite game would be like a football game, right? Kentucky's playing football on Saturday. There's agreed upon divisions and rules and time periods and winners and losers, and that's it. And the game's over. And when it's over, it's over. And infinite games are games that don't really have established rules. They're played by 2 more players. It's infinite and it never ends. And the way you can see that different is that Lyles Barbecue closed in 2020. We closed January of 2020, right before COVID stuff started, which was just super fortunate, to be honest. that closed, and I think there's still plenty of barbecue places in Lexington serving barbecue every day. So that game is infinite, and it just is going to keep on going. The next guy's going to come up, try their thing. Blue Door's going to keep doing their thing, et cetera, et cetera.
It kind of made me think of advertising, just to sort of transition over there and wrapping some stuff up when you were talking about going back to the tent, like going back to a much smaller footprint, something where you could test in a more controlled environment. There's a lot less risk here. Is that how you approach thinking of things like Facebook ads and Google ads and things of that nature, where it's like, okay, we're going to massage the creative a little bit, the talking points, see what's starting to pick up, and then whatever seems like it's really getting some traction, then we're going to throw the cannonballs at it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The framework we teach people is, from a marketing standpoint, when you're doing any new platform, it's another flywheel. We're a big flywheel company because it's momentum and all the things, right? Jim Collins, but the top of the flywheel is input. So it's basically, what information are you taking in from that platform? So like when you go on Facebook, let's keep it organic social media, your world, right? Let's say you want to start posting on TikTok, right? Everybody's talking about TikTok. You're ready to do it. You're doing the other parts of your marketing plan well. You're ready to expand. So you don't know anything about TikTok. So you want to go on TikTok and you want to spend 15 minutes a day just scrolling through, just seeing what people are posting. Search for things in your niche, see what people are doing. And what you're doing is you're gathering inside data. Your gut is being fine-tuned to, like, here's how people talk on the platform. Here's what they talk about. Here's the style of video. Here's how they shoot it. Is it high production? Is it iPhone? Is it a beautiful studio like you, or is it just walking around in the parking lot? Like, there's a lot of different sort of inputs that you can start to gather from that. Then based on all that, you move to the next section, which is a plan. Create plan version 1. We're going to post one TikTok every other day. And the goal for that is just to learn. So we just want to hit that targeting or that posting schedule so that we can get data and we can learn. It's a very small, easy plan to execute, but this is like week 1, right? The next thing you do is output. Actually go produce the content, figure out how hard it is to do, figure out all the ins and outs of like what it takes to ideate, create, produce, edit, publish. Like, what is the steps there? How do you do that? Then you get it out, and then getting it out on time. Every other day was the agreed upon cadence. Can you do that? And then from that, you start to get data. And so then you start to see feedback from the app of like, okay, am I in this view range? Like, how many engagements did I get? What is the content telling me about what's working and what's not working? And then the last piece there is you run it through your community. So like, if you have a partner like High Beam Marketing or Branded 78, you go to that representative and you go, okay, we've been doing this. Like, you've done this a lot. Like, based on this data, like, what's the community piece of that? Can you give me feedback on what's improving? What are you seeing on other people's platforms? How's it working? And then it comes back around to input. So based on all that information you just got from your first time around the flywheel, you go back to the platform every day, 15 minutes, consume. Now you're starting to see more. You're starting to see more of the matrix of that platform going, okay, here's why they're doing this video this way. Oh, I've never seen somebody do it this way. It's like your gut is getting more fine-tuned. You reevaluate the plan piece next, and then you go, okay, we're going to try to do one TikTok a day, every day, like 7 days a week. And then you do the output, you do it, and then you get the data, Then you talk to your partners about it. How did this work? What can we do better? And then it's like the momentum picks up, the flywheel gets better and better and better. What most people do, and why they suck at marketing in general, they suffer from what we call random acts of marketing. They chase this thing and this thing and this thing. And so they'll hire Branded 78 for social media for 3 months, and they'll make it 6 weeks, and then they'll quit because it didn't work out at this ridiculous level that they thought, and then they just bail. And then they'd go chase down paid ads with High Beam Marketing, and then that wouldn't work after 6 weeks, and then they'd bail. And then they'd buy some billboards, and then they buy some radio, and they're all over the place. There's no plan, there's no consistency, there's no focus. It's random acts of marketing. Versus getting people you trust on the team, listening to them, and then executing the plan for a long time. Like, it takes a long time to build a business. It takes a long time to build successful departments within that business: sales, marketing, customer service, your product. It just takes time. You have to give it time. Do you have the right budget or not? And that's why scale matters, because you have to establish, like when you asked me the question about what would I do marketing wise for the tent, I had $5,000. My money's now gone. So now I'm spending all my time calling event producers, getting us scheduled for events where they're going to bring the people in. We're leveraging their marketing. And I'm just going to make my experience in the box as good as possible so that I can get money to maybe start running Facebook ads or maybe build a website or whatever's next. But we would go back with a specific plan versus what we did the first time around, which is just random acts of marketing.
Mm. So how often do you think about that whole part of your journey? Is that a
The
daily thing, like the barbecue restaurant and everything else? Or do you
Yeah,
just kind of have you moved on, shall we
yeah,
say?
I have I look back at that time now just really fondly and really, really gratefully. You know, I don't think about it unless I'm talking to friends that want to hear about it, or maybe a story comes up that I think is relevant to what we're dealing with today. From a leadership perspective, I bring it up a lot with our team now because that's a lot of my relevant leadership experience. But, you know, emotionally, it took time, but, you know, have dealt with it. And ultimately what ends up happening, and I would encourage everybody to think about this with their businesses, is that you need to look in the mirror and go, this whole company rises and falls on what I do and my decisions I make. And that doesn't mean you become a micromanager. It doesn't mean you do everything in the business. It doesn't mean that other people don't have responsibilities and whatnot. But it is your job to pick, did you pick the right accountant? Are they giving you sound advice? Did you pick the right marketing company? Did you pick the right customer service person to take people's money at the cashier? Did you pick um, did you trust them to do the job? Were they the right fit? Like, there's a lot of things that you own it about it.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, that was what I ended up discovering in the 2 years after. So I took a 2-year break between Lyles Barbecue and High Beam Marketing, and I went and worked at another company and like went and worked on a huge marketing team. And I basically just took my advice of like going to work for a marketing company before I started my own, because I knew nothing about it and I don't want to make the same mistake twice, which is what I did with a barbecue restaurant. Um, So in that time period between these two businesses, I basically came to terms with everything that happened, good and bad, was my fault. And I'm okay with that. And as long as like you're going to fail again, you're going to mess up again. So just accept that. And the next time around, like we've already made mistakes with High Beam Marketing. We've not made the same mistakes. I can promise you that. Like first client paid us before we had an LLC, before we had this logo, before we had anything. Like we had broad ideas and we said somebody will pay us for something and we'll use that money to file the LLC, which is exactly what happened. The next month we got more clients, then we built a website. And like that was a mistake I made with the first business that I did not make with this second business. But
Mm.
one of the mistakes I made with High Beam, I took money from people, not took money, that's the wrong word. I said yes to clients early on because I needed money. And I kind of thought maybe they'd be a bad fit, but I was like, I don't know. I don't want to, I'm judging. Like, let me just like, let's work together. 90 days later, they were a terrible fit for the business. And so we're not
So do
making
you
that mistake anymore.
so in
But
hindsight, you kinda justified why to accept them because he needed some cash to help
that, why did
jumpstart?
I ignore the red flags and not press further and be
Yeah.
willing to say no? Two things. One, I didn't have the actual experience to know whether or not somebody
Mm.
like that would work out. So it's humility on my end to go, I don't know. So let's just say yes and see what happens and learn. Again, it was not a risk. Like if those clients didn't work out, we weren't going bankrupt. Um, Another
Right, right.
experience from the first business, right? And so, but now we don't take clients unless they're a fit psychographically, demographically, budget, goals, like all those things have to be in line before we say yes to people now.
Mm.
But those are all lessons learned from the first 6 months in the business that I did not learn in the
Yeah.
barbecue business. Because in barbecue, it's like, if you come in my door, man, welcome to the family. You're here for the backyard barbecue. Let's roll. It's a much different world.
Yeah. When, when does it make sense to start doing paid media? At what point, like, if you're looking at a business, what are some of the markers of like, okay, yeah, you're ready. You
Yeah.
have
So
X, Y, and Z in place.
yeah, it's for us, it's like, do you know what your company's purpose is? Why do you exist? Do you have a clearly defined target market? You know, who it is, why it is, what problem they have. Um, from there, it's branding. Do you have all your basic branding in place? Do you have your website built? Do you have a logo? Um, do you have your four walls figured out if it's a brick and mortar store? Do you have all the basics set up? And then and even social media, by the way, like organic social media should be handled by somebody in-house from day one, preferably the owner. It's just good for you to be in there tasting that, touching it,
Hmm.
learning about it, learning how to tell stories about your business, how to sell your business. When all of that is set up and you have the budget, then we say, okay, like let's start doing paid ads. And the reason we do paid ads before we start doing content marketing, which is the next piece, or even public relations, which is the next piece, um, is that paid ads will go out and they do that selling for you. It's direct sales. It's I'm running this ad, getting this return on investment that gives me cash to be able to go do the next thing as well as I can. And so but if you run paid ads before you know why you exist, who you exist for, who are you running ads to? Who are you targeting? What landing page are you sending them to? What store are you sending them to? Is your product even good yet? Like step one is like, do you have a good enough product or service to expose to the market? Because what's the old saying? Like good marketing just exposes bad products faster. Like it's all you're going to do is pour that money down the drain. And
so I'm curious, why do you do paid before PR?
Public relations is about top of funnel brand awareness stuff. So we did tons of stuff for television back in the day. We've seen like newsletters, like we've been written about, but it doesn't do any good for you other than a general awareness play. Like very rarely do you drive significant results to your business because of PR, unless you have like some crazy emotional story that the community rallies behind. Maybe you got hit hard by COVID. We saw a ton of those stories happening. So I'm not like, again, with all advice I'm giving, it all depends on your situation, but as a broad stroke, 30,000 foot view, the reason we do PR is for awareness, not to drive sales. It's to build brand reputation, not to get you to actually come in the store that day. I'm running Facebook ads to get you to come buy a sandwich today.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, listen, I know we could go on and on and on, and I really appreciate you and your patience with me getting started here today as we shifted all of this stuff going. So,
no, of course, man.
So where can we learn more about High Beam? Do you work with people in the Central Kentucky area? Is it?
Yeah.
We
work with people all over the country. We have one client local to Nashville, which is funny to me. All of our clients are pretty much everywhere else. The thing I would encourage everybody to do is go to highbeammarketing.com and join our newsletter. And we have some blogs there that are really well written for people that are trying to either one-man marketing bands and companies. Like I have to do all the marketing myself, which you and I have talked a lot about. Like they're doing emails, social, podcast, blogs, everything. We write blogs for those people and for business owners. If you go there, you can see a lot of content. That weekly newsletter that we send out is just free stuff, and it's just more information that I wish I had when I had the barbecue restaurant. That's why we do that.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, it's the whole like eating your own dog food thing is people like to say. That's a weird saying, but it is.
Yeah.
But cool, man. I appreciate it. We should do a follow-up sometime, like here in the studio next time you're in Lexington. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, 100%.
So sweet. All right. I'm going to go turn this off live real quick. Obviously, you got to stay on for a moment.